So the news we base this on is Michael Thomas. So Coach Dennis Allen comes out and says that it seems as if Thomas will be good to go when the season kicks off. That really isn't a big surprise to most of us, as that's what we've been expecting, knowing that he was activated for camp and he's kind of been moving through, no setbacks to our knowledge. So things do look good. But let's talk a lot now about how this passing game shakes out. So don't forget with Thomas himself. The last time we saw him play was in 2019, a full season, 2019. He had that magical season, 149 catches, 1,725 yards, and 9 touchdowns, playing with Drew Brees as his quarterback. He was the slant king, right? It was just perfect. Michael Thomas ran a slant better than anybody out there, and Drew Brees was great in connecting. It was a sweet spot. Drew Brees could maximize his arm talent and a great chemistry between them. It was a magical season for the ages until Cooper Kupp blew that away last year, I should say. So, but let's think about Thomas. Now, he suffers an ankle injury. We haven't seen him on the field in the last 26 games. That is almost 2 years recovering from an ankle injury. Now, I don't know about medical science too much, but I know that ankle injuries typically don't take 2 years to heal. My concern, now the age 29, usually not such a big deal, but the fact we haven't seen him on the field in so long, did that injury, which apparently was horrible, did it take away his elite athletic qualities? It certainly could have. He may have lost something. We think about when players take long layoffs, especially like this, it could be problematic. The other thing is, Michael Thomas may not have great chemistry with Jameis Winston. Some people say, well, of course, he's an alpha and Winston throws well. Yeah, I get it. But the routes that Michael Thomas, they were precision timing routes on those slants. Is Jameis Winston that guy? Because I really don't think so. I think he'll certainly throw to Thomas, but I think the days of being elite receiver are gone. Now, look, ADP, certainly you're not paying for a wide receiver 1 anymore. You're paying for more of a wide receiver 3. So we can definitely trade that off and say fair enough. Now, that said, Jarvis Landry's next. He's in the mix. Of course, he's played a ton of slot in his career. He's an excellent slot receiver. He'll be 29 also this year. Again, age not a huge problem. He's still certainly young enough, but he is coming off the worst season of his career. Now, we can blame some of that on Baker Mayfield and injured season for him, horrible season as well. And also Landry missed 5 games himself. But in 12 games, he posted 570 yards. So for him, that's not a very good season. He was well better than he was, well over 1,000-yard receiver when he was humming along. And 6.6 yards per target, which was a career low for him. Now, that's it. There's some extenuating circumstances. He's still a very good route runner, still available in the middle of the field. But my question here also becomes, if Thomas goes back to running those slants, are those in the area of the field where we're going to see Landry operate? And are those targets going to be therefore split up there? Another thing to consider. And then we have Chris Olave, the flashy rookie who was drafted high in the first round of the draft. And we think he will be a star. But I always worry with rookie receivers. What are we going to get from them? But especially here, not only do you have Michael Thomas, a player who's established as a star, we don't know what he is now, Jarvis Landry, a very reliable receiver, and now it looks as if, as we talked in yesterday's report, Alvin Kamara, maybe he won't even be suspended. And you know that he'll be a factor in the passing game. Maybe not the 80 catches he was getting in the Drew Brees days, but certainly part of that. So what will there be for Chris Olave? And that's my question. Let's heap a little more on this. Jameis Winston has not completed more than 60% of his passes over his last 21 games. Now, he had Sean Payton last year, and for times, Winston looked good, but he was still an inconsistent quarterback. And I really believe that when Winston had gone over to New Orleans, that 1 year where he sat, I felt like Payton would teach him and work with him and get him to a better place. And then playing along with that coaching of Payton, I thought Payton would put him in the great play calls, set him up. And that's where the rub is. Look, I say this all the time. Pete Carmichael was the offensive coordinator. He is going to run the offense here. But the genius of Payton, how he makes those in-game adjustments and play calls, That's not there. Pete Carmichael is not going to be the Sean Payton level of genius. I mean, is it possible? Sure. But whenever we see a coach, a legendary genius coach, move out, the next coach doesn't just take that genius over. So we could go back to seeing the versions of Jameis Winston that got him run out of Tampa Bay. So I'm going to keep layering this, okay? So New Orleans has an excellent defense. Yes, they lost some players, but they still have a very, very good defense. And they would like to run the football. They have Kamara, they have Mark Ingram back, and I know Ingram's efficiency dropped. We talked about him yesterday. But I think ultimately this team would like to play defense and run the ball. I think they would like Jameis Winston to be under 25 attempts so he doesn't throw multiple interceptions, get them in trouble, and put them in a bad situation. I just think we have a very interesting situation because there are definitely components on this team that make them look like they could be very good offensively. But I don't know that it's going to happen. And they, hey, they're going from Teron Armstead at tackle. He's now in Miami. Trevor Penning, he looked good in run blocking. He's a mauler, but in pass blocking, it's a little bit nerve-wracking for me. I don't know that he's going to get there in pass blocking. And overall, I think the line takes a bit of a hit as well. So overall, here's what I'm saying. Look, ADP on these guys is all fair. It's a lot of this is baked in. The passing game components are reasonably priced. But I am very concerned this will be a very low volume passing attack by design and by the fact they have a good defense and the fact that Winston is not the type of guy who you're going to look to run that consistent high power passing offense because, again, you want to keep him on script and keep him from having the big interception at the wrong time. So that's my take on that game, or on that situation. Next, let's go to some injuries here. So, hey, Chris Godwin. First time since undergoing that ACL surgery, he participated in 7-on-7 drills, progressing a bit at a time. Now, there's no definitive word as to whether he'll be ready week 1, but it's certainly beginning to look like he will be considered by the team as a factor early in the season. But here's the thing. And look, his ADP's gone up a little bit. He's certainly not excessively priced. I can't tell you he's a great agility player. He's a power slot. He makes great agile moves, lateral cuts in that slot to get open. I'm not sure that the ACL is going to have him at a full 100%. Maybe a lot of those routes he's been running that make him a Tom Brady favorite in the middle of the field, maybe Chris Godwin isn't used on as many of those. Maybe he used more of the outside receiver, and maybe just maybe Russell Gage becomes more of a slot player if Godwin is not fully able to play. If he was Godwin's an outside receiver, he could run different routes with less harsh cuts, more slants without the harsh inbreakers, maybe a little more downfield use. But there are some opportunities to think about here. Again, Godwin's ADP makes it palatable. But understand, we just don't know what version we're getting. So if you feel comfortable with where he's at in drafts, and if he's clearly the best player on your board at that point, then go ahead and take him. But if you have other players who you think have a similar floor, but maybe greater health and upside, then maybe you go with those other options instead. Over in Seattle, look, Pete Carroll and injuries, that scares me because he is an injury optimist. And often what he says doesn't make a lot of sense in terms of players' return. So Kenneth Walker didn't practice Tuesday because of what Pete Carroll called a little hernia issue. All right, I don't get it. A little hernia issue. Hernias are typically a problem. Now, maybe not. Maybe it's not really a hernia. But knowing Carroll's history to understate injuries, I'm a little bit worried, especially like August 16th today when the injury occurred. If he misses a month, well, that puts him into the regular season. Maybe it's a week injury. Now, you'll wait for more news to come out on this, but understand, be a little nervous. Now, that leads us to Rashaad Penny, who we know he had a groin injury. He was back at practice now. So that was on Tuesday. He returned to practice, and he's still considered the favorite to lead the Seattle backfield in week 1. Now, look, we know all about it. The lengthy injury history of Rashaad Penny, and he's already dealt with minor injuries throughout camp. So it's not like he's come back fully healthy. Yes, they haven't been harsh injuries, but it reminds us he hasn't even taken game contact, and he's already hurt. So look, Love Rashaad Penny's explosiveness. And I did draft him in many best ball leagues last year. Unfortunately, when he went off, my teams were largely out of it, but that's fine. You don't care about my teams anyway. But Rashaad Penny, nonetheless, look, I get it. He's likely to start the season. And if he stays healthy, he'll be great. I just am really finding it hard to see how long he'll play. But Walker, that's the problem too, because yes, he's going a little later than Penny and drafts are in the same rough range. But if the hernia becomes an issue, if it has to get a procedure done, then that backfield could be open in a hurry. Because if Penny gets hurt, I don't want to advocate taking a third Seattle back late in deep drafts, but DJ Dallas could be a thing here if Walker is significantly hurt. Just all that said, a lot of uncertainty here. If Walker checks out fine, the fact that Penny's been nicked up already, I'm almost thinking betting on Walker may not be a bad idea if you don't need to count on him very early in the season, because again, Penny will start. And there is a scenario where Penny keeps it. So just be aware. It's a very, very interesting story here. Matthew Stafford. So Jordan Rodriguez of The Athletic has reported that Stafford completed a second consecutive full practice. And it's possible the elbow could become an issue at some point. I think right now, the veteran QB is on track to start the season. So I think that it looks good for him right now, because if they thought he was hurt, they would shut him down for a month and get him ready for the regular season. They're not shutting him down. I think they're fine. Rams running backs, Cam Akers, Darrell Henderson, both are dealing with soft tissue injuries. Now, according to Sarah Barshop of ESPN.com, Sean McVay, the coach, doesn't have a timeline for when either player will return to action. But the comments went further, and as McVay spoke, he made it sound as if neither would be out longer than a week. So it sounds like they're minor injuries. But here's what I want you to know. We're hearing the buzz about Henderson and Akers splitting first-team work. Look, Sean McVay typically will establish a lead back. We know back in 2020 down the stretch, Akers was seeing over 20 touches a game. Henderson was relegated. Despite some comments from McVay, Henderson has consistently said he doesn't trust Henderson to stay healthy. And I believe it's Cam Akers in the workhorse role. He's still going in the late third round of most average drafts. I think he's a steal there. Now, if you don't like him, go to someone else. But Cam Akers showed me 2 years ago what he's capable of. We're getting a discount because he looked so bad coming back super early from the Achilles. That's where I'm buying, and I'm not even worried about Darrell Henderson. Like I said, if Akers gets hurt and you want to draft Henderson as a direct backup late, fine. Great. Totally sign off on that. All right, over to Philly. Miles Sanders dealing with a hamstring injury. He isn't practicing Sunday. It's a short window, a couple days now. Now, it's not been deemed whether the injury is serious or not, so right now, not a big deal. But any missed time allows Kenneth Gainwell to get extra reps, and I'm really high on Gainwell this year. I think he projects to be the receiving back. He's also been talked of as maybe being the red zone back. You know what? There's a world where Sanders could be back tomorrow. But I still think there's a world where Kenneth Gainwell is in good shape here. So, again, getting Kenneth Gainwell outside the 10th round in average drafts, the stock's going up a little bit. It used to be the 13th round. I think you may have to, pull the trigger in the 10th round right now. But I think Kenneth Gainwell has some real upside. And Miles Sanders, I keep saying this earlier in the month, it was that the yards per carry look good. The yards look good. But the consistency play to play doesn't. And if Philly can get more consistent production on a down and down basis, I think we saw Sanders in the same amount of games as 2020 lose 30 touches last year. I think he's not destined for more than 10 touches a game. James Robinson, just like Chris Godwin, James Robinson participated in 7-on-7 drills. First time since his Achilles injury. Now, look, Travis Etienne's been the star of Jaguars camp. He's the lead guy there. I think that's not a question at this point. But what I do want you to understand is, and I've said this before, James Robinson is a reliable pass protector. And we're not sure quite yet what Travis Etienne is there. We know that teams like to spell running backs a little bit so they don't overuse them. I think that James Robinson has a role on passing downs. Maybe not all passing downs, some. But he may be used more as a protector than a receiver. I'm not putting a lot of stock in Robinson as a fantasy option this year because I think his role will be more NFL-friendly than fantasy-friendly. And I still think Etienne is the guy that's going to get the majority of the touches here. So, again, draft Etienne as you usually would despite this news on Robinson. And then Zach Wilson of the Jets. Jeff Howe of The Athletic saying Wilson could return in 4 to 6 weeks after undergoing surgery on his meniscus. So maybe week 1, but right now it kind of looks like Joe Flacco is warming up for week 1. I don't know that it's a big hit to the receivers because I'm not even sure what Zach Wilson is at this point. And we saw Elijah Moore do well with 3 different quarterbacks in his last 6 games last year. So I think he's fine there. Not quite sure what the other receivers are going to do, but I think that Breece Hall is going to be heavily involved, the tight ends. I really don't know what Garrett Wilson and Corey Davis are going to do here because it may be a matter of Flacco getting the ball out quickly, dump to running backs, throw over the middle. That may be more what we're looking at here. But so understand that when drafting. And then job battles. Look, Antonio Gibson is starting to scare me here. He ended practice working with the first team offense. But look, last weekend, he fumbled on the second drive. In today's practice, before ending with the ones, he was working on special teams, third team offense. There's been nothing but negative buzz about Gibson this preseason. J.D. McKissick is slated for a heavy role as a pass catcher. Brian Robinson could be a short down back. Maybe he gets more. But if Gibson keeps having struggles, I cannot endorse drafting him where he's going. People are drafting him with the expectation of being a solid RB2. And based on talent, I see it. I love Gibson. I was heavily invested last year. But the vibes are just so bad right now that, if you believe in him, draft him. But seriously, I think his ADP is going to have to tumble in the next week or so because right now this news is just poor. And then finally, Ramondre Stevenson. Chris Mason of Mass Live reported that in the 2-minute drill, it was Stevenson functioning as the pass catching back, the James White role. Now, Stevenson didn't get a lot of targets this year, but he looked really good after the catch, good in pass pro. As a runner, he's a big dude, but he's elusive. And I get it. Damian Harris has that Alabama pedigree. He's been very good. He scored 15 touchdowns last year. I just think where Stevenson gives them some real juice and pop. And look, Stevenson has moved ahead of Damian Harris in ADP, and I'm buying as well. Now, the ADP keeps going up. At some point, you become nervous because it's a Bill Belichick backfield. We've seen it over and over. You never know how it's going to shake out, so there's risk. But I thought last year, I was in on Stevenson last year. Now, he didn't emerge till later in the season, but once he got out there, we saw the big fantasy games when he was given an opportunity. Again, there's multiple backs to play here. A lot of things can happen. The ADP starting to get a little bit prohibitive, but nonetheless, I do like Ramondre Stevenson. And there's also been some buzz. Don't know how worth its socket it's in, but Damian Harris, the buzz that he could be traded. Don't know that a team will trade for a running back, but if that happens, both have real fantasy value. Hey, everybody, thanks for your time, and we will see you soon.